Alright, what's up guys, got another video of what if Anakin Skywalker never left Tatooine. So I started a Cash App if you want to donate, if you have a video idea, if you want to see it, and I'll try to make it into a short or a video. So the Cash App will be linked down below if you want to donate or anything. You don't have to, of course, but up to you. But if you like this type of content, then be sure to subscribe for more fanfics, lore, comics, reviews, video essays, and just all things Star Wars. But with all that out of the way, why don't we just dive right on in. So the story starts out during the event of the Phantom Menace. Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Padme land on Tatooine, but don't go to Watto's shop and never meet Anakin. They find the part for their ship and fly off back to Naboo. The events play out roughly the same, except Anakin doesn't blow up the Trade Federation ship, but the Naboo fighters eventually take it out, but suffer many losses. Qui-Gon Jinn would still die, and Obi-Wan would cut Maul in half, and the Trade Federation would be defeated like normal. Obi-Wan says goodbye to Padme and heads back to Coruscant and informs the Jedi Council about everything, and he's made a Jedi Knight, but doesn't get a Padawan yet. But after about 5 or 6 more years, with the recommendation from Plo Koon, he'd take on Ahsoka Tano as his Padawan, but while the events of the galaxy in Star Wars unfold without Anakin, he would remain on Tatooine, a slave with his mother. A few years would pass and Anakin at this point would be 12, but his mother would have met Klieg Lars. Klieg would try to buy and free both Shmi and Anakin, but Watto wouldn't let both of his slaves go just like that. But he allowed Shmi to be bought, and Anakin told his mother he'd be okay, and so Klieg would buy Shmi, but he promised Anakin he would come back with enough credits to buy him as well. Anakin saw his mother leave with Klieg and saw the happiness leave his life. She was one of the only good things he had in his life, aside from his friends and pod racing. 3 more years would pass and Anakin would finish building C-3PO, and his dream was to be a professional pod racer. He completed in the last major pod race when he was 9, but he lost miserably and his pod racer had been destroyed, and it had taken him this long to finally build another one into working order. After Watto's shop closed for the night, Anakin snuck off to work on his pod racer, but as he walked into the desert night, he saw a few people jacking his ride. They were taking off every major part he had worked so hard to install. He ran after the 3, yelling at them to stop, but Anakin stopped mid-run when one pulled out a blaster. Anakin put his hands up and told them, "Whoa, okay, easy there, we can just all forget this happened." But the thug with the blaster shot at Anakin's foot, causing him to stumble and fall over. The 3 thugs laughed, and as Anakin tried to get up, he was kicked by one of them, and then the 3 proceeded to beat Anakin bloody. Skywalker cowered in pain, unable to do anything, and was left helpless and bloodied as the 3 thugs walked away. And not only that, but his newly built pod racer was practically destroyed. Anakin picked himself up, a rage built inside of him he couldn't contain. He saw the 3 walking away and yelled, "Hey, I'm going to kick all your asses." The 3 laughed and began to walk away, but Anakin was serious as he ran forward to punch one in the back of the head. But the other 2 saw this and responded with attacks of their own. The first punched Anakin in the face, knocking him back, and the other pulled out a blaster. Skywalker fell to the ground and looked up to see a blaster in his face, and the 3rd thug blasted it. Anakin covered his body with his arms, but he didn't feel anything, and he looked up in shock to see that he was still alive, but the 3 thugs looked in fear as the blaster bolt was stuck in midair. Anakin looked at his hands and realized he was somehow doing this. The Chosen One pushed his hands forward and the blaster bolt flew off in another direction. Anakin looked shocked, but he used this as he picked himself up and smiled, outstretching his hands. Anakin tried to recreate the feeling and he managed to just barely make the blaster fly to his hand. Anakin laughed, but then all emotion left his face as he shot the 2 thugs in the head, and as the 3rd cowered in fear and fell to the ground, he begged for his life. But on Tatooine, Anakin learned it was kill or be killed. His mother got lucky, but there were so many others, including him, that weren't. Normal morality was thrown out the window in the Outer Rim. You had to live by your own rules in order to survive, and this was Anakin's rule. If anyone threatened him or anyone he cared about, he'd end them. And as the last thug begged for his life, Anakin said nothing as he unleashed a bolt into his face, killing him. Anakin scoffed at their bodies and looked at the blaster and headed back to Watto's shop. Everything would change today. Anakin walked back into the closed shop and saw the Toydarian closing and getting ready to leave, and he saw Anakin and asked, "Annie boy, what are you doing here?" But Anakin's face remained cold and silent, with the only response being holding up a blaster. Watto saw this and put his hands up. "Easy there, Annie boy, you don't want to do this." But Anakin simply responded, "Oh, I've been wanting to do this forever." Anakin blasted the flying rat and shot him in the wings. Watto fell to the ground and Anakin walked up. He remembered the sensation of picking up the blaster and he did the same, but instead he used it to force choke Watto. The Toydarian struggled to breathe and Anakin smiled as he choked the life out of the flying rat until there was nothing left. His body went limp and Skywalker released his grip. All his pain and suffering seemed to just vanish like that. Now Anakin only wanted one thing, to see his mother. Anakin left, but not before setting the shop on fire and heading towards Klieg Lars' moisture farm. Skywalker walked out of Mos Espa and found a speeder that he borrowed. He needed it more anyway, but he had a rough idea of where the farm was, and so he headed out. The twin suns of Tatooine began to set as Anakin raced across the sandy dunes. His thoughts wandered. What was the power he used? He remembered hearing stories about the Jedi and how they fought evildoers and saved the galaxy with laser swords and telekinesis. He chuckled. Who knows, maybe he could become a Jedi one day, but Anakin smiled when he saw the farm in the distance and he finally arrived. The speeder was pretty loud, so it caused Klieg and Shmi to come outside to see what the noise was. eyes. Shmi saw Anakin and tears began to well up. Watto had kept her from seeing him for 3 years, and now here he was. She asked what he was doing here, and Anakin told her that Watto set him free. She didn't need to know the whole truth. Klieg smiled at the reunion, and Anakin asked if he could stay, and Klieg and his mother told him that he was more than welcome to. 4 years passed, and Anakin was now 19. He was introduced to Owen, and he also met Owen's girlfriend, Beru. They were all somewhat close in age, and Anakin grew close to them. He saw Klieg as a father figure, but he loved his mother more than anything. Anakin helped out on the farm, and in his spare time trained with the blaster and became an expert marksman. He practiced on the womp rats around the farm. However, he also tried figuring out the whole telekinesis thing, and he was able to move everyday objects fairly easily. You could also use it on living things if the need ever arose. But there was one time when Anakin remembered what Watto had done to him and his mother, and he delved into his darker side. And Anakin, in his rage, somehow unleashed a small amount of electricity or lightning from his fingers. He tried unlocking that power again, but he couldn't seem to figure it out. Anakin enjoyed his life, but everything changed one night when a group of Tusken Raiders invaded the moisture farm. It was late at night, and Anakin was woken up when he heard a scream. He recognized it as Beru's and quickly ran out to see what was going on. When he got outside, Anakin saw the moisture farm in flames, and he looked around. He saw Beru being taken against her will, screaming, and he tried to run to stop her from being taken, but he tripped over something and recognized it as Owen, or what was left of him. Skywalker backed away in fear, but his first thought was his mother. Anakin ran inside and found a Tusken Raider stabbing Klieg, and Anakin shot a blaster bolt into its back, killing the Tusken Raider. He ran over to Klieg and he told Anakin that they took Shmi. Anakin tried to stop the bleeding, but it was too late, and the Chosen One watched as his father figure bled to death. Anakin had a scowl on his face and he walked out. The Tusken Raiders were gone, and so was his mother and Beru. He hopped onto a speeder and followed their tracks back to their camp. It was still the dead of night, and Anakin hopped off the speeder and snuck into their camp. Anakin glanced around the village and feeling hatred as he saw Beru strung up dead with her entrails everywhere and the Tusken Raiders dancing around her corpse. Anakin snuck inside, quickly taking out a sand person guarding a tent, and he found Shmi inside. She was strung up like some animal, and Anakin cut her free. She dropped to the floor and into her son's arms. Shmi weakly looked at Anakin and said she was proud of the man he had become and that she loved him, and Shmi died in Anakin's arms. Tears welled up in Skywalker's eyes, and in that moment, all he felt was rage. He let out a scream that the entire village heard, and the emotional storm was felt all across the galaxy in the Force, and both Yoda and Palpatine felt someone with a strong connection to the Force was in immense pain. Anakin's eyes flickered a bit from normal to yellow, but back to normal. He gently set his mother down and headed outside. The Tusken Raiders surrounded him, but as tears fell down Anakin's face, he laughed as electricity coursed through his fingertips, and Anakin unleashed a blast of Force lightning at the Tusken Raiders, killing most of them. The ones that tried to escape, he shot down with bolts from his blaster, and the last remaining few he Force choked to death until only one remained. And Anakin asked the young Tusken Raider who was responsible, and in fear, the last Tusken said it was for killing a slave owner contracted to Jabba the Hutt. Anakin snapped his neck, and he realized that the crime ruler of Tatooine had set it for his family to die. Anakin walked out of the village, but not before burning it to the ground. He had not just killed the men, but the women and children too. He took Shmi and Beru's bodies back to the moisture farm, where he buried them with Klieg and Owen. He stood at his family's graves and knew what he needed to do. Anakin made his way across the sandy plains of Tatooine and made his way to Mos Eisley. He walked inside a cantina ordering a drink. He bumped into someone along the way but stared daggers into his eyes, scaring him off. Anakin ordered a drink and sat in silence, just listening. He heard someone talking about Jabba when he followed them out back with a blaster to the back of their head. Anakin said to stay quiet, and he asked, "Where is Jabba the Hutt?" A meek voice Anakin recognized as a female responded, "Past the northern dune sea and in the farthest reaches of Mos Espa." Anakin removed the blaster from her head and said thank you, and turned around ready to walk off, but the female voice spoke, asking what he planned to do, and Anakin told her he was going to kill Jabba. She was shocked, but she wanted in. Anakin looked at her puzzled and told her she'd be dead weight, and that if she didn't want to die to just buzz off, but she stuck around and followed Anakin. Skywalker looked back to her to see her still following him and sighed and turned around and asked what her name was. She said her name was Estella, and that caught Anakin off guard. He thought her name was beautiful, and this caused him to look at her in a different light, and he realized just how pretty this girl he was talking to actually was. He coughed to hide his fluster and introduced himself as Anakin. The two walked together and talked about life and everything else. Anakin apologized for putting a blaster to her head, but Estella said he could repay her by putting Jabba in the ground. He asked why she wanted him dead, and Estella told him that he was the reason her family was gone. Anakin understood that pain, and he told her of his mother and adoptive family, and this connection made the two bond over their shared tragedy, and made them see each other in a different different light. Anakin told Estella it wouldn't be easy as Jabba had control over everything and needed to plan this in meticulous detail as they hopped on a speeder and headed off into the distance. And so the next 3 years passed with Anakin and Estella creating a plan to kill Jabba. While Anakin and Estella gathered information, the galaxy was thrust into war. Obi-Wan Kenobi discovered the clone army in Kamino, and after the Battle of Geonosis, the Clone Wars began. And after 3 years of the Clone Wars, it came to an end when Palpatine realized it was the right time and executed Order 66, wiping out the Jedi. Grievous had been killed in Utapau, and Dooku led the clones to march on the temple. Palpatine sent Maul to kill the Separatist Council, and after Palpatine created the first Galactic Empire, he became Emperor. Maul challenged Dooku to become the true apprentice, and Maul gained the upper hand, killing Dooku, and became Palpatine's apprentice once again. The Inquisitorius was formed, with the Grand Inquisitor and Darth Maul leading the hunt for the Jedi, with the main Jedi surviving being Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka. But none of that mattered to Anakin or Estella as they finalized their plan. After 3 long years, they were ready. Estella used 2 dual blasters, and Anakin used one as his main weapon, but he learned how to use the Force better, and he could now control his lightning to a somewhat decent control. They learned the inner workings of Jabba and his palace. Once ready, they traversed through the northern Dune Sea and headed to Mos Espa. Along the way, they ran into some Jawas, a group of Tusken Raiders who Anakin slaughtered, in the Sarlacc pit, which Estella saved Anakin from, but they finally saw the palace in their sights. They had gathered intel from every lowlife and every cantina they could find. The new Jabba would be here at this time with minimal guards. Anakin and Estella snuck in the dead of night and quickly took out 2 guards near the entrance. They made their way through the palace, easily killing every guard they needed. Eventually, they made it to Jabba's throne room, but as they entered, they were surrounded by bounty hunters. They dropped their blasters and put their hands up. A blue bounty hunter named Cad Bane stepped forward, placing shock collars on both, and kicked Anakin to his knees and brought Estella to Jabba. The fat crime lord laughed and spoke in Huttese as if Anakin really thought that he could kill him. He had known the entire time that the slave boy of that little Toydarian had lived and wanted to kill him, but he survived that little Tusken Raider invasion on his farm, and now here he was. Anakin scowled and Jabba laughed as he ordered for Estella to be brought to him. Estella struggled, but she was shocked by the collar and fell to her knees in front of Jabba. The fat Hutt laughed once more and proceeded to fondle her. He ripped off her shirt and forced himself on her against her will. Anakin saw Jabba doing all this to the girl he had grown to love, and his anger couldn't be contained. Estella began crying, and Anakin tried to move but was shocked by the collar and beat repeatedly by the bounty hunters, but as Anakin looked up in pain, the last straw was when Estella began crying, and Jabba licked her tears. Anakin's eyes turned yellow, and in his rage, unleashed everything. A massive force push sent the bounty hunters flying. The collar was shocking Anakin, but he fought back against the pain, and as Cad Bane tried to shoot him, he picked him up with the force, breaking his neck. The other bounty hunters got back up and ran towards him, all the while his collar was electrocuting him, but Anakin unleashed a massive torrent of force lightning that overpowered the collar and went off in every direction, disintegrating everyone. Jabba dropped Estella in fear, and Anakin proceeded to use the force to pick Jabba up and force choke him, but that wouldn't be enough. Anakin brought Jabba closer to him until he let the Hutt go, and he cracked his knuckles and proceeded to beat the crime lord to death. Estella saw Anakin do all this for her, but realized he was losing himself. Even after Jabba was nothing more than a bloody pile, he continued to punch, but he stopped when Estella grabbed his hand. Anakin looked back with tears in his eyes, which had gone back to normal, and he hugged Estella. The two then shared a passionate kiss and left Jabba's palace and traveled back to the moisture farm. Anakin and Estella had fallen in love, and upon returning married each other and soon welcomed a newborn son. They named him Luke. Anakin had always liked the simple aspect of Owen's name, so he wanted his sons to be like that and be unique, as he knew he would do great things. 10 years passed and Anakin and Estella raised Luke on the moisture farm. Luke had inherited his father's ability to use the Force, and Anakin taught him some of the things he learned on his own, but it all changed when out in town Luke was making one of his toys float, and a passerby saw this and reported it to the Empire. And soon Anakin heard a knock on his door, as when he opened it, the Grand Inquisitor, the third sister, and fifth brother stood at the entrance, and the Grand Inquisitor asked, "Where is the Force user?" Alright, and that's the story. So I'm going to continue this story in part 2, which will be released in a few days. I wanted to just be it like the Tatooine aspect by itself in just one video, and I want to do like the Empire aspect in another video. I feel like it's 2 separate stories that take place in the same timeline. But I found this idea to be really interesting. It could have gone like a bunch of different routes. I feel like Anakin could have become a bounty hunter. He could have just been chilling as a slave for the rest of his life, but I kind of wanted to go with like a unique route that I haven't really seen anyone go before, and have Anakin learn some Force abilities but not really know what he's doing. Like, he discovers he can Force choke motherfuckers, and he discovers Force lightning. Not sure if he would be able to do that, but it sounds cool, so I added it in. But then the original character of Estella, I feel like it's sort of what like Pente Patrol Star Wars does. He sometimes creates his own characters, but he makes it in a way so that it makes sense that they could realistically exist in the Star Wars galaxy. Like, there's quadrillions of sentient beings, and I feel like Estella could just be a person trying to survive on Tatooine that Anakin happened to run into. Overall, the story was fun to write, and I'm looking forward to writing part 2. But if you liked the video, then be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know down below what more videos you want to see, and go check out my other channels, which will all be linked down below. Go donate to the Cash App if you want to see a video or a short done, and with all that out of the way, I will see you all in the next one. Peace.